Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Today I want to do a quick preview of all the healer trinkets for Season 3. We don't know how the final tuning is going to end up, of course, but it's pretty important to have an eye out for some of the big trinkets you might want to end up farming a little bit later on as the season begins. So let's start off with Arazz's Ritual Forge. This is from the Forge Weaver Arazz fight, so it's a raid trinket. Gives you crit, and then there's a 2-minute on use where you recklessly feed a portion of your essence, granting you primary stat, decaying over 30 seconds at the cost of 15% of your maximum health. So obviously for a dungeon environment, you'd never use this trinket as a healer. In a raid environment, maybe if there was some spec that was really focused on sort of like 2-minute timers, there's a possibility you could run with something along these lines. But what I think is really relevant to think about with this trinket is not so much if you're going to be wearing it as a healer, but the DPS wearing it and when they are going to actively be utilizing it. Having a 15% loss in your stamina is a huge deal, especially in a dungeon environment, and there'll be tons of times, I think, especially for those who play Disc Priest, but even for other healers, where you could line it up with, say, a major 2-minute cooldown that you're seeing. I don't know, let's just say for Breath of Sindragosa, last I checked it was a 2-minute cooldown. If that was being run for some reason and not unholy, you would always associate Breath of Sindragosa casts with this person is going to be more vulnerable, right? There's plenty of 2-minute cooldowns in the game that you could draw conclusions with from this, but it's important to have that in the back of your mind as a healer, that when somebody's using a major cooldown, they could be even more squishy than they already might be. So that's why you should definitely be keeping an eye on Arazz's for your own research, but also, of course, for how good is it going to be for the DPS players. I haven't mentioned it yet, but you should definitely keep questionablyepic.com bookmarked as the final tuning for these trinkets. Volk is the leader of the website, the founder of the site, and he's always updating those for when they get more information and everything. He usually releases the list right as the season begins because they do so much last-minute tuning. Next one I want to talk about is the Diamante Void Core. Gives you mastery and the equip. Your spells have a chance to empower the Void Core, granting you intellect for 15 seconds. The chance is increased by 25%, while below half mana. Multiple applications can overlap. So I like this trinket a lot, and a big part of this is also the Shards of the Void set. So this pairs up with a weapon, and what the weapon does is it fires these void glass shards, either dealing damage or, get this, it's, I believe, a 20-second absorb that it puts on a players. And I want to say it's like something like 2 million in terms of shielding, so it'll probably end up like like 20% or 15% of somebody's health that you could be putting up with these weapon shields. And so if you have the 2 set, meaning you have the Void Core trinket to go with one of those Void Glass blades, then your Void Glass shards are 200% more effective. So I believe they were around 20% with the set bonus. And so that would probably line up with, of course, having the 200% additional effectiveness to be able to have them together. So on its own, you'd probably have some pretty weak shields out of the weapon itself, which could mean, especially for the healers that don't naturally apply shields like Disc does, you could get a lot of extra value out of having these absorbs by running with the trinket and weapon combo. Probably one of the strongest trinkets of the next season is going to be the Astral Antenna. Its primary stat with the equip of just giving you critical strike. It is a small, like, pink orb that will slowly track towards your character, so unless you're just hardcore running away from it, you'll pretty easily get it, and so you don't really have to worry too much about that. Big thing is just like good uptime. It's int, it's crit, it's good uptime. Not really too much to go into on that one. But what we do have to go into is Lumithar's Living Silk. This is haste with a 1.5 minutes on use, which is putting up absorbs on everybody in your party. Okay, so it's you, 4 nearby allies, so you'd always run this, or you potentially would be running this in a dungeon environment, or predominantly, and it reduces their damage taken by 75% until about 3 or 4 million damage is absorbed. So the big thing with this trinket is that you can set it up before incoming bursts of damage and only having a smaller amount of damage going through, which is always nice because then it's much easier to have this large absorb on players that's absorbing some of the damage, as long as it has like a reasonably high cap to it, because you can always heal these smaller amounts of damage. Having only 25% of a hit go through is like nothing, right? So that's really strong. I think it makes the absorb a lot stronger as well. And it's a 1.5 minute cooldown, which means you can use it so frequently as this sort of additional shielding effect whenever you don't have that much output or that much shielding. So regardless of which healer that you are, I think this is probably going to be one of the safest options. Maybe not the best for like super high-end groups or anything like that, but probably one of the best pug options that you can have. Because every minute and a half, if you know that they don't have as many kicks or crowd controls, or you know they don't have damage cooldowns for a pull, it's probably a pretty good idea to put up some preemptive shielding and some defensives, because you know the pull is going to take a lot longer, more potential for AdCast to go off, something to go wrong. I've seen that way too many times in pugs that I'm almost like clockwork watching for like the DK's cooldowns or something, because I know the trash pack will die on that pull. So I think Lumithar's is easily going to be one of the most sought after trinkets, and is off a relatively early boss. I think it's like boss 3 or 4 in the order, so it should be a pretty early boss to fall down as well. So definitely have this one on your list. Next up, we have the Nexus King's Command. This is Mastery with the equip that you become oathbound to a nearby ally every 30 seconds, and directly healing the ally fulfills the oath to grant you intellect for 10 seconds and shields your ally for 100% of any healing done. Now, the big thing about this that I didn't realize at first was that you don't have a window of time for extra healing. Once you directly heal that target, then that healing effect you produced makes the absorb, and there's no other chance to make absorb from it. So you can't stack up a whole bunch of healing really quickly or anything. You could like Guardian Spirit, Holy Word Serenity really fast or something along those lines, but that's kind of as far as it would really go. When it comes to the Oathbound buff, however, it's a debuff you have to track. I was trying to put it into like the buff section with Cell, and I just like couldn't. And so I have to keep an eye on my debuffs specifically to watch for this effect. And once you see it, then you also have to make sure you're kind of tracking it onto the right person at the right time, because this also kind of doubles as an on-use trinket, if you think about it. Now, when you're ramping as, let's say, a Disc Priest, you have to individually apply a lot of atonements through Powered Shield, Renew, and Flash Shield. And so if you applied your 10th atonement from a Flash Shield that applies it to your target and then to yourself, you could basically force proc it at that moment in time. And then you have this 10-second window to, you know, hit double radiance, hit Avenge, your Shadow Fiend, all of that other good stuff. And you have like 3 or 4 seconds of this buff that would carry it for you. Don't really know if that's going to be worthwhile, since it's only like 2,000 or 3,000 more intellect than a similar like stat stick like the antenna that we had seen before, but it's kind of an interesting idea to mess around with it, especially if there's some specs that can get their healing off a little bit faster in the process as well. This trinket is also pretty annoying. I had a short about it where you have another thing to sort of track to min-max for your gameplay, so it does add the cognitive load to it, which is always not the best. When I messed around with it in dungeons, it kind of just gives you this temporary shield. Sometimes, especially with a lot of specs, it feels like you might crit and do a ton of healing off of a single target spell, and then sometimes you don't. I think I was playing like Farsi or Shaman or something when I play with it, and so the difference between like a crit healing surge and not was very substantial. Now getting into some of the dungeon trinkets, we have a Lily of the Eternal Weave, and Disc Priest, here's your minute and a half on use trinket. You're going to be farming up Ecodome Aldani for this one. Primary stat gives you mastery. It's similar but more simple than a House of Cards, and you're going to be farming it from the new dungeon, so congrats. From the old dungeons, you have Arakara Sackbrood making a return. If you didn't play in Season 1, this one was incredibly sought after, as you basically have these eggs and you release them and they hatch, and you get a bunch of primary stat. Basically, it's one of these trinkets that encourages you to actually do some extra damage, and even for healers, of course, you know, their healing effects are still going to be proccing it. One of the best trinkets that we had in Season 1, and it's making a return. Now, this wasn't the best trinket in the Empowering Crystal of Anubikaj, but it was like a pretty good one throughout the season, so this is another easy, I think it was usually around like top 5, top 6 in Season 1 or something for a lot of healers. Not the best, but it gives you the rotating random secondary stat that is going to be a lot better than a lot of the early options. Signet the Priory makes a return. This is primary stat with a 2-minute on use, granting you your highest secondary stat, and having some extra value if you have other people with Signet of the Priory in the group as well. If you didn't play in Season 2, just kind of coming back to the game, really strong if you're in your 2-minute cooldowns. Keep an eye out for it. Similarly, bursting light shard from Priory is making a comeback as well. I can also include a macro. If you're using it right now, there's basically a macro where you add it to a focus and you kind of just spam it, and then it allows it to be set to focus. When I use Cell, I basically use this macro, and this basically allows you to have a spotlight frame in Cell set up, and it's already going to be set to focus. You just drop the light shard where your cursor location is, and then you just spam the macro so it sets it to a focus. Then you can heal the frame from it. I'll have a little clip and stuff like that to show with this. But yeah, keep in mind, good damage trinket if you wanted to do some damage. Next, we have some really powerful trinkets. This is the first class healing distributor. Now, when Tazvesh came out, this was one of the best trinkets. This is basically the Mr. Pick-Me-Up of the time. Your healing spells have a chance to deliver a burst of healing onto your targets, and also grants you haste. So it was a super powerful trinket. We're going to be watching to see if it's going to be the super powerful trinket of Season 3. A lot of tuning is going to go into it, but if so, and if it's anything like when Tazvesh first came out, you really wanted to have both of the trinkets. So not only the first class healing distributor, but also Salea's secret technique, which is primary stat, and then it's an on use where you buff a target and you basically take their highest secondary stat. And so you grant them some of that stat and you get that stat for yourself. So you kind of have to like fish around of like who wants haste, who wants crit, who do I kind of bind myself to in the process. But really, really good trinket for a lot of players when it came out originally. We're going to keep an eye on tuning, but probably a pretty good chance that it'll be relevant given that they really want people to do the Tazvesh hard mode, which they're going to, I believe, count as like a +10 for your vault, or at least they think that they will. So pretty good chance you'll be running it too. The next up are some Floodgate trinkets. Dark Fuse Meta Chopper was really bad in Season 2. One of the more mediocre trinkets we had of the season. You basically command a chopper to attach to your target, absorbs damage, grants them verse, everything like that. You have a chance to refuel the chopper. This one, pretty weak. It would be interesting if they actually buffed it up enough to make it worthwhile, but I doubt it. I'm not really expecting it. There are some other ones from Halls of Atonement, which I really hope that they are bad. It's haste and it's an on use where you basically form this font of power at your feet and it increases your intellect by standing in it. I hate these trinkets. They're really annoying to playing around, and most of the time they're also pretty mediocre, so it works out. A couple more Delve trinkets that I noticed on these lists. Part of it, of course, is going to depend on tuning, but Mana Forge Aether Cell is one of them I noticed, where your healing abilities have a chance to power your Aether Cell, increasing your mastery. This one might be pretty relevant. Some of the Delve trinkets have been like really good at the start of seasons, and so that's why I want to kind of bring some awareness to some of these things. In case you see them rated highly on a list, at least you kind of have a quick check of like, oh, how do I actually farm this up? Because the delve level is higher if you are just coming back from Season 1. They raise the delve level. They also, I believe, raise some of the vault rewards. Correct me if on that if I'm wrong. Pretty sure they ended up doing that. So it could be very relevant in the first couple weeks to make sure you're doing high tier delves to get, of course, better loot for your vault. There's also a Twisted Mana Sprite. This one is kind of like a Galagio bottle service. I played with it, and I think it was like doing like 15 or 20% of my healing, something crazy on a couple of these pulls. In general, it was similar to a Galagio bottle service in that it was like 10, 12-ish% of my healing, something like that. But it's versatility with your healing spells. Summon a sprite, and they just start healing random nearby allies. Any overheal turns into an absorb. This one, like I said, doesn't have any primary stat on it, so it should have a large healing effect. So don't let that bait you into like, it's better than all these other options or something. It might just be highly tuned at a low level from delves, and we may not get it at a high enough level for it to be worthwhile. But that's our list. If I missed anything, be sure to let me know. I think I got everything, especially from the raid. It does look like we have some really good dungeon trinkets again, which I think a lot of people are going to be very, very excited with. The downside is one of the trinkets that gives us the most safety is also from the raid. Upside is it's from an earlier boss, so you don't have to worry about like killing Dimensius Mythic to get this perfect optimal trinket or anything along those lines. So that, I think, should actually be a pretty big plus. In fact, I don't think there is any Dimensius, like trinkets, I should say. But the Nexus King is the second to last boss. He's like the Mugsy, and he's the one who has like the Oathbound, where you have to heal that specific target. So unless you want that trinket, you actually are going to have a much easier time than Season 2 in farming up some of these options at a high level. So That's sick. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any other questions, leave them in the description. Big love to our patrons for making all this content possible. Catch you next time.